Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yes? You can move back a little bit if it's a little bit too hard to see. Then I have a little bit more space to walk in front. All right. So how has the painting been going? Good? It was fun?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. How many of you were there per bathhouse? Three or four? Four? Yeah. Good. Good stuff. All right. So my name is Carol, and I'm here today to talk to you guys about bats. Now, I first learned about bats at my job. I work as a biologist. I work at Husky Oil, and I sometimes get to play with bats. But I first learned about bats at university. I took this course for 3 weeks in the Okanagan, and I like to call it bat camp. It was like going to camp for 3 weeks to learn about bats. And we stayed in these little lodges. And has anyone been to summer camp? Yeah? So it was kind of like that. And every night we would go out and we'd catch bats in these traps and these mist nets, and we'd study them and count them and weigh them and measure them and see what different kinds they were. So that's where I first learned about bats. Has anyone been to the Okanagan in BC? Yeah, so that's where the most different kinds of bats live in Canada. There's 18 species of bats that live in Canada, and I think there's about 15 that live in the Okanagan. And there's probably only about 7 that live in Calgary. 7 different kinds of bats that live in Calgary. So it's a little bit colder here. There's not as many different kinds of bugs and beetles. So it's Halloween. So is anybody being a bat for Halloween? Or has been a bat? You've been a bat before? Oh, good. Not this year, though? Right.
I've been a bat.
You've been a bat. Oh, good. Well, look out for those bats on Halloween. Maybe they'll be out there. So there's 2 different kinds of families of bats. Does anybody know what kind of families of bats there are?
Microbats and megabats?
You're right, yes. And what makes them different, those 2 kinds of, what's the difference between the megabat and the microbat?
Megabat's big and microbat's small.
And what else? That's true, but what else? Something about what they eat. Very good, yes. So the megabats are the fruit bats, and the microbats are the insect-eating bats. So does anybody know what kind of bat this one is?
Microbat?
No, this is a fruit bat. And this is a megabat. See, they have kind of the longer noses, and they're not so intricate, the noses, and they're usually bigger, the megabats. And also, so if you think a bit bigger of bats in the context of other animals that live in the world, bats starts with M. Because they're not, are they a bird? No. What are they? Very good, a mammal. Does anybody remember what makes a mammal and not a bird?
Mammals have hair.
They do, yes. What else?
Mammals are warm-blooded.
Yes. What else?
They give live birth.
They do, very good. One last thing.
But they can see colors.
Some of them can, yeah, but not all of them. Their mothers feed their young milk, right? So that's the other thing that makes mammals mammals. So the one other thing about bats there are more than 1,000 species of bats in the whole world. So if you think of cats, the cat family, can anybody name me some other kind of cats that live in the world? Yeah, you. Tigers, lions, cheetahs, right.
Mountain lions?
Mountain lions, yep. Snow leopards. So there's probably only about 40 or 50 kinds of cats that live in the world. But there's over 1,000 bat species. So that is a lot of diversity in bat species. And this is kind of a mouse tail bat, I think it's called. Because it's got a long, there aren't many bats that have long tails like this. And this is a big flying fox that lives in Asia, in the Philippines. And what do flying foxes eat? Fruit, right, they're a fruit bat. And some people even eat fruit bats in Asia because they're big. And this is a very tiny little bat. So some of the smaller bats in Canada only weigh as much as a loonie. So 5 grams. So this, and those are the eastern small-footed bat and the western small-footed bat. So this is one of those kind. It's very small. So when they're flying around, they look a little bit bigger because their wings are out, but they don't weigh very much at all. So the bats can have a big range of sizes, from this big to very small. So this is just some, these are all the different kinds of bats that live in Canada. Those ones there. And then there's 30% of the 1,000 bat species in the world are fruit bats. And the rest are insect-eating bats. And then there's only about 2 or 3 vampire bats in the world. And we'll talk a little bit later about vampire bats. But there's probably only about 7 species that live in Calgary. Has anybody ever seen a real bat or a live bat? Yeah? Where did you see one? And in caves? Oh, cool. At the zoo, yeah. What kind of bats do they have at the zoo? Fruit bats. They have fruit bats at the zoo. You saw bats at a pool? Under an umbrella. Oh, like hanging, just kind of stuck inside the umbrella? Cool. That's neat. At the zoo? Yeah. One came to your house. That's neat. And visited you? Did you put it back outside? Oh, good. Oh, cool. Yeah, so we have an office building at Husky that sometimes gets bats inside of it. And sometimes the people don't like it too much. So we put some bat houses outside. And there's lots of bats that live in those bat houses outside the building. So my favorite of these is called a spotted bat. And I don't have a picture of it because I couldn't find one. But it's a black and white spotted bat that lives in the Okanagan. And it's one of the only bats that you can actually hear when it echolocates. And then these other bats are much smaller. The spotted bat is quite a large bat. This is called a hoary bat. It's one of the bigger bats that lives in Canada. And it lives in the boreal forest, in trees. And it migrates in the wintertime. Does anybody know what migrating means? That's right, yeah. So most bats actually hibernate in Canada, in caves or in trees or in a warm spot in little crevices in the rock. But the hoary bat and the red bat both migrate to the United States for the winter time. Oh, this one has, you can see here, this is a good photo to see the kind of the hand of the bat. So you can see, does anybody know what this piece is? That sticks out? What part of your body is that? Is the same that you have? Thumb, yes. So that's the thumb. And then there's its fingers. Oh.
That was totally spazzing out there.
It was spazzing out. There we go. I got too close. So you can see its fingers are spread out there in the bones, and then here's its pinky, this bone right there. And there you can see its arms too. So here's its arm muscles. It does, and it looks like it's wearing pants.
It looks like he's wearing pants and a hat. What a guy is he?
Looks a bit like that.
Ah!
So here is a bat hanging upside down. Does anybody know why bats hang upside down? Do you know? So when they're sleeping, yes. But they could sleep right side up. Why do you think they hang upside down?
Because all the blood gets in there.
No, that's not why they sleep upside down. That's part of the reason. So if they can see pretty well from when they're hanging upside down, and then they can escape easily if there's a big bird or an owl or something that comes along and tries to catch them, they can fly away. All right, here is the piece about how do bats find their food? Echolocation, very good. Yes, so what is echolocation?
It's like when you like make a noise to an animal or something, they will repeat that.
Yes, that's right. Good. Anybody else?
The bat does this thing, and it bounces off and comes right back to him, and then you can know the size and shape and stuff of it.
Very good. Yeah. So I have this. It's called a bat detector, and I have it because I'm a bat. And so what the way it works is if you can turn it on, and if there's bats flying around in the room, let's pretend, and they're trying to find their lunch or their moths or their beetles and things, then they echolocate, and then I can hear it on this bat detector. So it kind of sounds a little bit like that when they're flying around, and they kind of go click, 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 zzz. And when you hear the zzz sound, that means they got the bug. So it's kind of fun to take out camping or take down to the river in the evenings, and you can listen to the bats flying around. And there's different frequencies on here that the bats talk at, so that you have to listen to. Do you guys know what frequencies are? So the bats talk at about, or the little brown bats, the bats that we have around here, talk at around 30 kilohertz. But all different bats talk at different frequencies. And so depending on what kind of bat you're looking for in the evening, you have to turn this dial to see what, to the right frequency. So I'll pass this around, and we'll just leave it on, but quietly, so you can kind of see it, and you can pretend you're a bat. There you go. So I'll show you this little video that shows you how. Well, meet the world's biggest bat. Yeah, it's probably that flying fox that was in that first photo that I showed you.
You've probably heard people say that bats are blind. The truth is, these winged mammals see very well. But to catch bugs in the dark, they need some extra help. Bats beam sound waves into the air and listen for the echo bouncing off flying insects. This is called echolocation, and it tells bats exactly where to find their bug buffet. Every night, bats consume about half their body weight in insects. That would be like me eating 7 bags of apples a day. Because bats are good bug catchers, they're really helpful to have around. If there's no natural habitat nearby, then you can give them a home by building a bat box. And that's just a start. When you go to hww.ca, you'll learn more about bats and get ideas on how to help protect Canada's wildlife. That's hww.ca.
I don't. So this bat here that I showed you is probably one of the world's largest bats. So this is an insect-eating bat, and it's called a leaf-nosed bat. And the insect-eating bats are the ones with the kind of crazy-looking noses. Can anyone think why they have funny looking noses? And because it has to do with their echolocation, I think. So they can make different noises with their, if they have a different shaped nose, and then they hear with their big ears. So they make the noises with their nose, not necessarily their mouth. They just catch the bugs with their mouth. And here is a small-nosed insect-eating bat. So they have quite diversity of funny noses, don't they? He does.
Looks like a dog.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. And this is a bat catching a moth or a bug. And there's some bugs that actually have ears because they've studied the bugs that bats catch, and they actually have ears and can hear the bats when they're echolocated, so they try and fly away. But who knew that some bugs have ears? Yeah? Yeah, you thought that bugs had ears? Yeah. Well, they probably might think that some bugs can hear them, but you're right, they might try and not echolocate so much when they're trying to catch. I think it's mostly moths that have ears. So here are a bunch of the different kind of bugs that the bats will eat. Can anybody name a couple of kind of bugs on here? Ladybugs, yes. Butterflies, yes. Don't think I was saying.
Ladybugs and moths.
And moths, yeah. Yes. Crickets, yeah. Praying mantises, yeah. And there's some beetles over here. Some beetles fly. And then there's some flying ants. Some stages of the ant's life, they fly around.
Horn beetles.
Horn beetles? Yeah. There's some horn beetles there, you're right. Fireflies. I don't know if there's any fireflies, but you're right. The bats might eat fireflies because they'd be easy to see for them, wouldn't they? Because they have little lights. Bees, I don't know that bats would eat bees so much because they probably don't come out at night so much. Well, I think the bats could get over the sting, but yes, they do eat mosquitoes, yeah. So they're very important for pest control too, bats, and farmers, because some of those pests take away some crops, some farm crops that farmers are trying to grow. So this is a photo of what's called the Bracken Cave in Texas. And there's many millions of bats that live inside this cave, Mexican free-tailed bats. And if you're ever to go there, it takes 40 minutes or more for all the bats to fly out of the cave. So can you imagine doing something for 40 minutes and just watching all these millions of bats fly out every day? Wouldn't that be cool to go? I've never been either, but it would be fun to go. And also, what else? Do you think there might be some predators that hang around this bat cave that are waiting for all the bats to come out? So what kind of predators do you think might prey on bats? Foxes, maybe, but foxes, they have to jump pretty high to catch the bats. Owls, yes, that's a good one. Yeah. Big birds, yeah, like eagles or hawks or, I think they would wait by the cave every night for a good dinner. Oh, it's just a bad photo. It's just pretend it's covered in bats. I couldn't get the photo to work properly. Ah, and this one. Does anybody guess what these, can you think what these ladies are doing? So bats live inside caves, and thank you. And so inside the cave are millions and billions of bats. And what do bats do? What happens when there's lots of animals together? They all do Does anybody have a dog and you have to go into the yard and pick up something every once in a while? The way back?
Pardon?
Yeah, you?
Probably dogs.
Right. So bats also poo. So these ladies are picking up all the bat guano, it's called. The reason they do that is because it's good fertilizer. So they go and they dig it and they put it into bags and they take it to the market and they sell it as good fertilizer for plants. So, I know, isn't that funny? But it makes good fertilizer because it's just crunching up little bits of bugs and fruit. So it makes very good fertilizer. So in some caves, in the olden days, it used to be there'd be too many people in there disturbing the bats, and then the bats would leave. So now it's kind of regulated in some caves where you can only go in at certain times of the day and get so much guano, and then it keeps the bats happy too. Here is a bat catching a beetle. He is looking right at it. Looks tasty.
That's kind of scary.
So bats are also very good.
At gliding.
Pardon?
At gliding?
At gliding, but they're also very good pollinators. What else is a pollinator?
Bumblebees?
Bumblebees, yes. What else?
Butterflies?
Butterflies, yeah.
Moths?
Moths are good pollinators too, yeah. So bats are very important pollinators. Fruit bats are important pollinators in the forest. And they fly around to different trees and pollinate all sorts of plants. This is a special kind of treat. Does anybody know what kind of plant this is? Did anybody have something yellow for breakfast this morning?
Banana.
A banana tree. It is a banana tree. You can see up here are the small little bananas starting to grow. There used to be one that was at the zoo in the old conservatory, but I don't know if there's a banana tree still in the conservatory. But so here's a bat pollinating banana trees. He's got pollen all over his face. And these are all sorts of different kind of fruits that bats pollinate. So there's guava, there's mangoes, and there's fruit and gum that comes from trees that bats pollinate, avocados, mangoes, bananas, yep, peaches, cloves, allspice, so different kinds of spices, cashew nuts. Yes, well, there are ropes. There is some rope that is made from trees or plants. So the plants that make the rope, yeah. Yeah, so bats are very important pollinators. Are there other fruits and plants that you guys can think that bats might help plant or pollinate?
Trees? Is there a piece of wood?
There's a piece of wood there?
Is there an airplane?
Yes, or my thought was that the airplane was supposed to be there to show that all these products come from different parts of the world to come to your house. So they have to fly them there. Yes? Maybe coconut. Or fig trees. Or jackfruit. Does anybody know what a jackfruit is? No. There was a girl in the other class who knew what it was.
I know what it is because I saw it, but
You forget. It's a big fruit, and it's kind of got little spiky things on it. And you cut it open, and it's pretty tasty inside, but it's huge.
oh,
Well, if you think of it, you can tell me later. Haha, here's a funny bat, just licking his lips after eating some yummy fruit. Oh, I found it.
It's laughing.
Laughing, eating bat. Yeah. Here's one eating a mango. Kind of could be a mango. Could be a mango.
It's like a bat drawing.
Flying around with the fruit. He's going to take it back to his family.
They die wrestling.
So bats live in the forest, and what happens when people cut down trees? That's right, they don't have any more homes. So they take away their habitat. So it's important to keep the habitat for animals and for... Here's a piece of forest that's all good. It's got intact habitat. It's got lots of plants and... Well, they're kind of vines. It's a rainforest. So it's a big forest, so there's monkeys and birds and bats and all sorts of beetles and insects and things that live in here, so it keeps the bats. It's a great place for bats to live. And there's even some fish-eating bats. I think this is a fish-eating bat. He's trying to catch some fish with his legs. It kind of could be water skiing. Yeah. And here's a frog-eating bat.
Frog.
There's a
Frog.
That's just kind of weird. Wow.
Here's the story about vampire bats. So who knows where vampire bats live? Anybody? No. Pardon? Barns? They might live in barns, but I'm thinking more what countries or what part of the world do vampire bats live? Sure. Why do they call it a vampire bat? That's true. But so vampires bats eat blood, kind of like mosquitoes. So this bat is taking a bite out of, well, I think it's a bird, like a chicken or a dinosaur. It's not a dinosaur. It makes a little bite and then it sucks the blood out of the bird. Yes. You're right. They do live in South America and Central America. So that's the only place they live. So there's no vampires in Canada. And the bats will often prey on livestock, so cows and goats, and so that's why the farmers and ranchers get a bit worried about vampire bats. But really, they don't harm them that much. They just have a little bit of snack in the middle of the night, and then the animal won't die being bitten by a vampire. So. No, they don't. So this picture, I couldn't get this video to work, but it just shows all the bats flying out of the cave all at once. So I was saying to the other class that if you wanted to if you wanted your teacher to find the video while you guys were painting or something, you guys could play the video of all the bats flying out of the cave. Yeah, 100 by 100. And it would take 40 minutes or so for them all to fly out. So this is a bat cave, and all these little dots here are bats. So this cave is full of bats. There's millions of bats in there. There's hardly a spot in there where there isn't a bat. And it'd be pretty noisy walking into that cave, actually, because they talk, they chitter-chatter away, squeak away. And some caves, they don't let people in anymore because it kind of disturbs the bats if you go into the cave. And so it heats it up, it makes it the wrong temperature, or the people bring in diseases. And so they try and keep people out of some bat caves. So here's another way that some bats live, is they just hang in trees. Fruit bats hanging in trees, maybe in Africa. Yeah. Does anyone remember this kind of bat? We saw it earlier. No. Hoary bat. Close though. Very good. Yep, so this is the hoary bat, and it's quite pretty. It's got silver and gray, and it's one of the bigger bats that lives in Canada. And it lives in them. Here's a picture on a pine tree. So we have lots of pine trees in Canada. And here's my friend Scott putting up a bat house in a tree. So we'll put up some of the bat houses in trees that you guys paint. And then there's the bats kind of snuggled into their little bat house there. Picture of them inside the slots. So do you know how many bats can fit in the bat houses that you guys are painting? Very good. 300. Up to 300 bats. So we're going to put some in husky sites all over Alberta. And then I'm going to work with the city of Calgary to put them in city parks too. So maybe one day you guys will see your bathhouse in a city park. So I'll get your teachers the list of where the bathhouses are going to go in the city, and you can go visit them maybe one day. Sometimes bats hibernate in caves over the winter time. So they'll fly into the cave and sleep there for the winter. The hoary bat and the red bat, the two bats from Alberta that migrate, but the rest of them will snuggle up in caves and things in the winter. So they're probably in their caves already. Yes? Sure. I think they'll just, if it's summertime, they'll just stay where they are. They get wet, it doesn't matter too much. They won't melt in the rain, just like you. There's also this problem with bats in Canada right now, and it's some bats are getting a disease called white nose syndrome. And what happens is and it usually happens in caves when there's lots of bats, and this is little bits of fungus that's growing all over the bats. And what happens is that when they're hibernating, the fungus makes them cold, and then they'll wake up, and they'll be spending too much energy trying to keep warm, and then they'll die because they just get too cold. So the scientists are trying to figure out how to stop it from coming, but it's a fungus from Europe that's kind of been brought to Canada, North America, and the United States. So the scientists are working hard to try and figure out how to help the bats, but it hasn't come to Western Canada yet. Here's a bunch of bats sleeping in a cage. What is this? What kind of bats? Baby bats. These are all little baby bats snuggled up in a cage. So some bats have a maternity cage. So they'll have their babies in the spring, and then all the mummies will they'll all be together. And so the mums have to try and remember which ones are their little bats, which one is theirs. And they figure that out by, each bat makes a little squeak, kind of like the penguins. Have you seen the penguin movie? Where the penguin, the daddy penguin has to remember the sound that the baby penguin makes, so it's kind of similar. So the mummies have to remember what sound their little baby makes, and then go and find it again. There's a funny little bat. So I hope you guys will paint the bat houses with all sorts of neat designs on them. This is one my son painted last spring when we did some other bat houses. So be creative. And there's a bat drawing he did. He's in kindergarten. I'm going to his school on Wednesday to talk to their class. Oh, and here's Miss Mawak's class from the last time I came to talk to her class. I found this. So here's all the kids with their bat houses. So I hope you guys will take some photos of the bat houses when they're all done with you with them. And we put one in the tree up here. You can see Scott up in the tree. There's the bat house way up there. And there you go. That's all I had. You guys have any other last questions? You guys have any last questions about bats or that you've been studying or about the bat houses?
I just have a comment.
Sure.
Where do you work again?
I work at Husky Oil.
In downtown?
In downtown.
That's where my dad works.
Oh, really? Oh, fun. Yeah. Well, there you go.
I know another name for bats.
What's that?
Flying mice.
Flying mice? No, bats are not flying mice.
Some people call them.
Yeah. But mice are a different part of the mice are still mammals, but they're not flying mouses. They're bats themselves. There's 1,000 species of bats, just as bats. There's not even as many rodents or mice species as bats. So there's lots of different kinds of mice, but there's not even as many bats. There are as many mice. Any other questions?
How many times does it say bat?
Lots. I'm glad you noticed my bat shirt. It says, it doesn't actually say bat. It says insect, predators.
It actually does say bat.
Oh, there's bat. Yep, you're right, there's bat. Pollinators, bat, red fox, flying fox, guano, little brown. And it says flying mammals, echolocation, endangered, Chiroptera, because that's the family of bats. Is the scientific family name for bats is Chiroptera. Night flying, three-tailed bats, three-tailed bats, nocturnal, Myotis. So the little brown bat is called Myotis lucifucus. That's the and then hibernivores. Hibernates. Yes. I got this shirt from Bat Conservation International, which is a good organization down in Texas. And they have a website that's got all sorts of bat information.
You guys have any other questions?
Yes. Are bats colorblind? I don't think so. I think they can see color. Yeah.
All right, can we say thank you one more time?
Thank you.